The prorogation challenge was heard last week, and very soon we'll find out whether or not MPs have to go back to work or if Trudeau gets to cancel democracy for a little bit longer. Liberal Party frontrunner Mark Carney, or Mark's Commie, or Maximum Carneyage, whichever one you prefer, may be worse than Justin Trudeau. I know that might be hard to believe, but we have a raging, flaming dumpster fire to show you. You, our loyal and engaged audience, have been consistently sending us emails with comments and feedback, so it's our pleasure to dive into the mailbag and comment section to close out our show. Wednesday was the 3-year anniversary of our tyrannical federal government shutting down the wonderful Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, and we're just under 1 month away from the 5-year anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Don't let the veneer of peace and normality lull you to sleep. There is still much work to be done, and I want to formally invite you to grab a shovel, roll up your sleeves, and join us in storming the gates of hell in Canada. It's February 21st. I'm Andrew DiBartolo. That's Matt Halleck. This is Liberty Dispatch.
Hey, welcome back to Liberty Dispatch, friends, where we bring you conservative Canadian news and analysis from an unapologetically Christian perspective. Make sure that you go over to our Rumble channel, that you subscribe over there to everything we do. Same with our YouTube channel, which we're trying to kick off again, get off the ground, as we've been canceled, I think 2 or 3 times at this point, but we do see some more views and some more engagement over there. So wherever you are getting us from, be sure to interact with our content over there. If you like what to do, you know what to do, as we always say. So be sure to go and do that. Also, our Substack. Be sure to go over to our Substack, ldcanada.substack.com. ldcanada.substack.com. Everything that we do is over there. So the best place you can see all our content is over on our Substack. So we would highly suggest that you go over there and you get everything we are doing over there, especially in light of the fact, Andrew, that we have some wonderful content coming up in a matter of days, with our first interviews of the year dropping from various guests. Craig Klein will be this weekend as of recording. So on Saturday, Jonathan Wellham from Rockland came on to talk about some trade wars and tariffs. John Carpe we're going to have on to talk about the prorogation of Parliament, their case that they're bringing, and also just the legal landscape of Canada. We're going to have Joe Boot, Dr. Joseph Boot from the Ezra Institute, on the show to discuss various cultural topics from a Christian perspective. So you're only going to be able to get the full episodes, those full interview episodes, if you go over and subscribe to us over at ldcanada.substack.com. You're definitely not going to want to miss some of those very important discussions. So go over there, check it out. We would encourage you to do that. How you doing,
Yeah, that's
Andrew?
going to be the only place.
Again.
Doing well. That's going to be on the Substack. Is going to be the only place where you'll find the video that we released yesterday. So, in light of the 3-year anniversary of the convoy ending in Ottawa, I decided to go through all my old footage, and I have quite a few videos and pictures from not only the several weeks we spent in Ottawa, but also the Canada Day celebration that year when James Topp walked all the way from the West Coast to Ottawa. And then the 1-year anniversary of the convoy shutting down, I got to spend some time on Parliament Hill with Josh Alexander and the Save Canada boys. So I was looking through all that footage, and I put together about a 15-minute video with videos from those days and pictures as well. And so for those of you who don't want to forget and want to remember, maybe you didn't take lots of pictures and videos, but if you want to at least see from my perspective what the convoy looked like, what the Canada Day celebration looked like, and what the anniversary looked like, All the footage is right from my phone, stuff that I recorded. So you're only going to get that when you ever head over to our Substack. We just dropped that the other day. So ldcanada.substack.com, lots of good stuff showing
And
up
go
there.
Canada, go! As of recording, we are recording as the final game of the Four Nations Cup is happening. So I thought I would deck out in my full Canada swag. Canada, may you win the battle, but unless we repent, may you lose the war, is kind of my feelings at this point. But I'm a big hockey fan, and I know many of our listeners probably are as well. So go Canada, go!
Mm-hmm. So the Lord has put our bodies together to be able to restore themselves naturally when we fuel them with the proper nutrients and get rid of toxins. Plexus is a gut health supplement company that helps restore diminished nutrients and rids our bodies of toxins, yeast, and inflammation that create havoc. Unbalanced blood sugar levels, inflammation, and poor gut health lie at the root of the vast majority of our health problems. By addressing these three root issues, Plexus helps get our bodies back to the way they were designed to function. My family has been using Plexus products for years now, and we feel a tangible difference in being able to keep up with all the demands of a very busy household. And we've even seen many of our health concerns diminish over the years. So if you're looking to feel better and restore your gut health, make sure to email healthandliberty@proton.me. Again, that's healthandliberty@proton.me. And you will get hooked up with a discount today. A representative will be more than happy to help figure out, is this the right fit for you? What products work best for you? Healthandliberty@proton.me. Get a discount today. Last week, so as of, depending on when you watch this episode, last week for us, February 12th and 13th, a federal judge heard a challenge to the prorogation of Parliament by Justin Trudeau. Now, as of time of recording, he's not rendered a decision yet, although John Carpe was saying that they could expect a decision as early as the 21st, which will be the day that you watch this video go out on the interwebs. But we wanted to give you some of the updates now in anticipation, and then obviously as the story breaks, we'll have more to say. So both the hearing and some of the arguments that were made, and even some thoughts from John Carpe himself. So here's some clips from an interview that he did. I believe this was on the Friday after the hearing ended. And so we just wanted to get his perspective on the hearing and the challenge and the prorogation.
The Justice Center's lawyers were putting forward our case on Thursday, February 13th, to argue that government needs to be accountable to Parliament under our Constitution. So Parliament is the boss, and prorogation is a valid tool for shutting down Parliament after a session has been concluded, but it should not be used as a political tool by the Prime Minister to serve the interests of his political party. And so we're saying prorogation's fine, of course, but it shouldn't be abused in this fashion. I think the judge is very keen on releasing a decision early. He ordered an expedited hearing, and I would not be surprised if we had a ruling by February 21st. Would not surprise me. The judge was not at all sympathetic to the federal government's arguments that this should be like a normal court case and it should go on for months and years. The judge said, no, if we don't release a decision soon, then the decision would be irrelevant. If we come up with a court ruling in May, June, July, August, then it doesn't serve much of a point. But because we might get a ruling as early as Friday, February 21st, that's going to have a real impact, because the court ruling will mean that prorogation never really happened, and so Parliament will be back in session. Well, the federal government could appeal, and but typically the rule is that the judgment stands unless and until it's overturned. Even if we lose, it's going to provide some clarity on what the Prime Minister's powers are. Currently, there's no Canadian case law that specifically outlines what the Prime Minister can and cannot do in regard to proroguing Parliament. So it'll be worthwhile from that sense. We'll get some clarification in place, because this is the first court action of its kind in Canada.
I remember hearing that in the past, prorogation usually happens when a parliamentary session has ended, not in the middle of one. So
Yeah.
the parliament was prorogued in the middle of its 44th session, which is very uncharacteristic of prorogation. So the Western Standard actually had a really helpful article in giving some more insight as to what happened during the hearing, some of the arguments that were made. And I mean, we can see that clearly if we actually lived in a country where the charter was upheld and judges did what was right according to the law, this decision would go one way, which is Parliament get back to work. So this is what the Western Standard put in their article. Quote, the challenge argues Trudeau's decision went against the principle of good governance as per Section 91 of the Constitution Act. Lawyers argue he served his own self-interest in attempting to dodge a non-confidence vote that would have triggered a snap election, and the decision to invoke the nearly 3-month prorogation fell outside his executive powers. Lawyers challenging the case further argue Trudeau's 2 reasons for prorogation he gave during his speech did not give sufficient grounds for doing so, and note in their memorandum of facts and laws, Trudeau never did mention why the lengthy prorogation would be preferable to an election. Well, we know why, because he doesn't want to lose. Anyways, JCCF lawyer James Manson argued on Thursday, the court must establish parameters for reasonable justification of prorogation, which would limit executive powers and government overreach. What would be offside? Is there really to be no limit? Manson asked. Do we really want a prime minister to have that much power to do whatever she or he wants, whenever, for how long they want? Close quote. Good question. Good question.
That is a pertinent question. As you can hear from what John said there at the end of that clip that we played, that is a big time part of why this challenge is so needed. That, again, we've talked about this a lot. Like, sometimes the only reason we fight isn't just to win. Sometimes, especially in courts, it's to establish precedents, to discover the truth of a scenario. And that stuff's very, very important. And I think by not letting this just happen and challenging it, it just exposes Justin Trudeau and the Liberal regime for their hypocrisy, for their self-interest. It just shows how they're crass political actors and not, as they want to keep trying to portray themselves, those who are acting in the best interest of our democracy and the nation as a whole. And to speak of Justin Trudeau's hypocrisy, we don't actually, the internet is forever, Andrew. You've said it many times. We actually have, firsthand video evidence of Justin Trudeau speaking against the prorogation of Parliament, even in an appropriate way, when he was the leader of the opposition and not in control of the federal government. So this is the right dishonorable prime hypocrite showing his true colors, and all the caveats that we normally say apply. Just hold your breath. If you're watching, it's a younger, more.
He's even more nasally. He's even more nasally. So it's probably
yes, yeah.
It'll probably. I'm pretty sure. I was speaking with a doctor earlier, and he seems quite certain that a younger Justin Trudeau's voice could probably trigger seizures, and I'm having a stroke just thinking about it.
Just anticipation of the clip.
It would trigger seizures and spasms probably more intensely. So, yeah, get the phone.
Let's listen to the Prime Minister in his own words.
And the 2 prorogations in 2 years. The first, to avoid a vote of non-confidence that would have surely brought this government down. The second, to avoid difficult questions. Anyone who disagrees with this government gets pushed aside. The challenge becomes that he gets to use every tribune he can use. All the media, all the voices, all the attention, and gets to further marginalize people who disagree with him. That's why we're talking about prorogation today.
So there you have it.
That clip is astounding to me because he is speaking to himself. That's everything he just said. Leveraging the media, pushing aside dissenters, not allowing certain media outlets access, avoiding the vote of non-confidence. It's almost as if as he was giving that little, well-rehearsed speech, when he was done, he probably sat down and said, being in power and using prorogation this way is actually really smart and is very politically expedient. I should remember this when I get in power someday, that I should do the exact same thing. He's the exact opposite of who he is now.
Yeah.
And when would that have been? 2014, 2013, maybe 10 years ago, 11 years ago at the most.
Yeah, I mean, God's good for giving us direct evidence of him caught in his lies and his hypocrisy. And it just shows you that this whole prorogation scheme is a really underhanded political maneuver in order to best serve the Liberal government. As John Carpe lays out in the case, and I'm sure they did extensive, homework as lawyers who are bringing a case before a federal court. There is no justification that would meet the threshold that is specifically provided by Justin Trudeau for this decision to prorogue government. It's completely for the best interests of the Liberals and their new leadership race, and not Canadians. And it's wholly undemocratic, right? You're literally freezing the democratic process to do exactly what Justin Trudeau was complaining about there, to stop a non-confidence vote so then you can remain in power. While you remain in power, to continue to forward your insane Marxist agenda, and then also with your supporters single-handedly pick the next Prime Minister of Canada. And as we're going to see, it could very well be someone who's not even an elected individual, a member of Parliament in Canada, who is the next Prime Minister. So if you believe these people when they spout the nonsense about believing in our democracy, I'm sorry, but you have to get your head checked, because every time that democracy and the democratic process doesn't favor their political self-interest, they're so quick to throw that aside in order to maintain power, to push their political agenda.
Well, they do want to protect their democracy. It's just in their democracy, only they are allowed to vote. So yes, they do want to protect their democracy, because their democracy is the one where only they have the ability to do the things they want to do. I'm very curious to see how this goes. I mean, again, as of time of recording, I haven't heard anything yet. By the time the show gets released, maybe we might have to add a little bit of a note or some sort of addendum or edit to the release if information comes out. I mean, the reality is, I could see the judge, taking the expedited nature because you have to save face, but in reality making the case that, hey, it's only until March 27th. I mean, at this point, we're like a month away. Really, is it really going to make a difference? I could see that decision coming down, and then I'm thankful for it, because at least we see where the lines are even clearer than before. Although I think it's still
pretty clear sad. At this point. That would be a sad decision, because it wouldn't be based on legal principle, but totally pragmatic concerns. And to me, that is, beneath the court. They shouldn't be. That's showing partiality, right, to the situation. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be actually, giving a decision based off of the legality of what's going on. But
by the time a decision's made, so chances are the decision will be rendered before we have our interview with John Carpe. So we'll talk with him about the results. But one of the things we're going to talk about with him, especially, is he's written a new book recently called Corrupted by Fear. And in his book, he outlines the lessons we should learn from history regarding tyranny and fear, and what happened during the COVID era with lockdowns and masks and mandates. And he examines what was supposed to be an impartial judiciary, but the judiciary was heavily influenced by the media and the health establishment. And so he outlines in his book, and we know this is the case. I mean, we were alive. We were covering all these cases. We were, close friends with all these pastors. The judges were neither impartial nor objective, as they were heavily influenced by health services and heavily influenced by, spouting the media narrative. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's more the same, but it would be good to know. I agree with John. It would be good to know exactly where we are and how things stand.
It just shows though too, like just a quick comment before we move on, the importance of common law, like Anglosphere common law tradition over what's now become a case law kind of way of running the judiciary, which has typically been more of a European thing, especially coming from France and everything. And Canada has made that legal shift. I think we talked to our friend Bruce Party about just that. But and that's what I'm talking about. Rendering a decision not based on the situational aspect, the current event aspect of the legality of it, but just rendering a decision based off of the Constitution, the Charter, its legality on the face of it. That's the type of common law, general equity kind of principled idea that you have versus case law, where judges basically not based on law that's outside them, but based on their best estimation of the situation, kind of try and render a legal verdict based off of a ton of information that they're taking in. And that's not the proper common law tradition in Canada, in the Anglosphere, but it's more typical of pagan nations, and sadly, our nation is no longer one that really believes in the rule of higher law, and this just goes to show that. But I'm looking forward to the discussion with John on this issue. Hopefully, he can give us a lot of insight on the decision when it comes out, and what this potentially means for Canadians.
Inflation through the roof.
Grocery prices up 11% year over year.
Censorship of dissident voices. Freezing of bank accounts.
Justin Trudeau invoking emergency powers against the truckers. Banks can now freeze their personal accounts, the accounts of anyone linked to the Freedom Convoy.
Digital surveillance and communism spreading.
What do we want?
Basic income!
With the basic income, and I felt a sense of security because I didn't have to worry about not going hungry, and I didn't have to worry about being kicked out of my apartment.
The government is on the verge of bankruptcy, and they're coming for your money.
Is Canada's federal debt increasing in real time, now surpassing $1.2 trillion. This debt is draining taxpayer dollars, with interest alone costing $54 billion this year.
It's time to break free and start saving in money they can't take from you. Since 2013, the folks at Bull Bitcoin have one mission: destroy central banking. Bull Bitcoin is the most trusted Bitcoin company in Canada. They empower you to buy, sell, and pay bills with Bitcoin. They are 100% non-custodial, which means that you always maintain full control over your Bitcoin, allowing you to reclaim your financial sovereignty and secure your wealth for the future. Their customer support will assist you throughout the whole process, helping you get your hands on the hardest money ever created. Escape their financial gulag, click on the link below, and start buying Bitcoin today and get a $20 bonus as a listener of Liberty Dispatch.
Love it.
So for those of you who are needing the link specifically, you're going to want to head to mission.bullbitcoin.com/dispatch. So that's an old link on there, but that's okay.
Oh,
So
that's an old link. Sorry.
mission.bullbitcoin, that's okay. mission.bullbitcoin.com/dispatch. I think that link still works. I think there's a little bit of a grandfather period, but mission.bullbitcoin.com/dispatch. That's where you want to go to buy your Bitcoin. We got to spend some time talking about Mark Carney or Mark's Commie, or my favorite is Maximum Carneyage. That's my favorite.
No. Okay, can I put forward Marximum Carnage?
Marximum
Carnage.
Marximum? I think that's a little too much. You're doing too much.
No, it's perfect.
Maximus Carneageminus.
Marximum Carnage.
Whatever you prefer. Apparently, now that he is the Liberal Party front runner, this is what they're trying to tell us, or this is what they're trying to convince us of. Now that he's the Liberal Party front runner,
Chris,
all of those liberals who abandoned the Liberal Party in favor of Pierre Poilievre, who thought Trudeau was too extreme, so we got to leave the Liberals and we got to fall into the loving arms of the Conservatives, the elites and the media establishment would have us believe that now that Carney has been, basically crowned the new emperor of the Liberal Party, that they're now coming back to the Liberal Party in droves in support of this. So this is a report from the Edmonton Journal. Quote, a Ledger survey suggests a Carney-led party, or a Carneyage, right, a party of Carneyage, would boost Liberal support by 6 points to 37%, putting them in a dead heat with the Tories. The poll says the Liberals are currently at 31% support. Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives are still riding high in majority territory at 40%, and Jagmeet Singh's NDP is trailing far behind at 14%. Ledger recorded a 6-point bump in Liberal support since January 26th, after President Donald Trump's tariff threats and calls for Canada to become a U.S. state, close quote. So here's an image of the Ledger poll, and we'll put it up, and then we'll explain to you what's going on. So basically, what this poll shows is there are three options. Justin Trudeau is leader of the Liberal Party, Mark Carney is leader of the Liberal Party, and Chrystia Freeland is leader of the Liberal Party. And it's the one in the middle that's the most curious. So the poll says that if Carney were to be the leader of the Liberal Party, that the Liberals would basically be tied with the Conservatives in terms of support, that you have the same support. They're polling the same with the NDPs and the Greens, down in extra overt socialist land. So that's the Ledger poll. And they would have us believe that with the announcement of Trudeau's resignation, with Trump saying we're going to bring in the tariffs and make you the 51st state, that now all of a sudden these liberals, these disaffected liberals, have come back to the party because they like the idea of having not Trudeau and also someone to help fight back against Trump. Now here is an image of an Abacus poll showing the results of the exact same three options, dated in a very similar way. So what the Abacus poll shows, which is similar to the Ledger poll, is that no one wants Chrystia Freeland to lead the Liberal Party. So that's
good.
The first thing.
Which is so good, Andrew.
We know that so no one wants Twitchia Freeland, who's looking for sugar water, to lead the party. No one wants that.
It's the Canadian Kamala play, and not even Canadians are that stupid. It's
so
awesome.
With Chrystia Freeland, you have the Liberal Party. So right now, the Liberal Party is polling, according to this poll, at 27%. And the Conservatives are 46%, which is quite a bit higher than the Ledger poll says. I'm more inclined to believe the second poll. In fact, I think it might even be higher. I think that even still, this is, generally speaking, Conservatives are not the ones to answer the phone to do polls because, they're usually responsible people who are working and dealing with their family and don't have time to answer phone polls. So it's probably higher. But if you look with Chrystia Freeland as leader, it's even worse. Although it's curious that with Chrystia Freeland as leader, for some reason, all of a sudden, NDP support jumps up by 5%, but Liberal support goes down.
Yeah,
so
basically all the Liberal support goes to Jagmeet rather than Poilievre's Conservatives.
Maybe, yep. Now, it's the number in the middle, and according to this Abacus poll, that with Mark Carney as the Liberal Party leader, the support for the Liberal Party is marginally higher than it is right now, but you still have Poilievre and the Conservatives at 45%. So Brian Lilly from the Toronto Sun posted all these images on X and basically said, argue amongst yourselves. So
yeah, I saw that.
My estimation is that both these polls are, they're both wrong. So it's either they're just preparing for a rigged election, which I don't know, I think the numbers are too overwhelming. I think it's going to be a tsunami of people voting for conservatives. So it could be that, or it could be a way of saying, well, don't even bother going to the poll. I don't know what they're after, but at the end of the day, I think that both of them are underplaying the reality that it's going to be a Conservative Party decimation coming up. But what they would have us believe is that with Carney at the helm, the Liberals are more popular, poised to win, and in a better position. So who is this magical white knight who's going to save the Liberal Party from the destructive forces of Justin Trudeau having rendered the party useless? Here's Pierre Poilievre's thoughts on climate Carney. What does he call it? Carbon tax Carney is what he calls him in this video. Let's see what Poilievre has to say.
Carbon tax Carney and carbon tax Chrystia are just like Justin. Chrystia Freeland has been in charge of the budget for the last 4 years. How's the economy been doing? I don't think I need to say anything more about that. But the other guy, carbon tax Carney, here's a guy, he was a government bureaucrat, then a government banker, and now he spent the last few years as a glorified lobbyist for corporate welfare bums, going around trying to get grants and subsidies and handouts from the taxpayer for the wealthiest corporations in the world. And by the way, he has the most radical policy agenda. He believes the carbon tax is too low. He has said it on the record. He thinks the carbon tax is too low and needs to go even higher than Trudeau has already placed it. He will be the voice for the billionaire, globalist elite that have been impoverishing the working class around the world for the last several decades. He is the golden boy of the World Economic Forum, and he will be a disaster if he ever gets anywhere close to power. And we know that because he has been Justin Trudeau's personal economic advisor. He is the chair of Trudeau's Economic Growth Council, even to this day. Google it. It's on the Liberal Party website. So if you think that Justin Trudeau has done a bad job on the economy, you know who's been pulling his strings? Carbon tax Carney. They're both just like Justin, and that's why we need a carbon tax election to fire them all and bring home a common sense conservative government.
So I got to say
those comments, I think, are the reason why I think these polls are highly skewed. I don't think Canadians are really going to believe this. I hope, I pray. This is me having faith in my fellow countrymen that they're not that we're not going to fall for the Kamala Harris halftime switchery.
Don't have faith in them. Don't have faith in them. They might vote for Poilievre anyways, but don't have faith that it's for the right reason. So two quick things. One, I want to correct Pierre that video or that particular interview is dated from January 20th. Now, Mark Carney is promising not to raise the carbon tax. It's a little more nuanced than that. He plans on dropping the consumer carbon tax, but we're gonna
hide it.
Well, we don't want to reveal our hand yet, but we're going to get into what it is that he actually plans on doing. But to be accurate, Mark Carney is not saying we need to continue to increase the carbon tax. He said we are wanting to remove the consumer carbon tax. But anyways, that's one correction. And the second thing is, and I have to keep saying this, okay? I have to keep saying this because I mean it with all of my heart. whoever Poilievre's writers are, give those guys a raise. I mean, the WWF writers that are cutting his promos, it's fantastic. They must be the same guys that were cutting promos for The Rock and Stone Cold in the late 90s, early 2000s, because this
the Attitude Era.
He is coming up with some good stuff. I mean, even the way he talks about him.
Well,
Carbon Tax Carney and Carbon Christie are just like Justin. And then the other guy, it's just like, oh, it's great.
Well,
I really enjoy watching wrestling and Canadian politics.
I think it's a lot like Trump is to credit with this, right? Who's the guy who's key, like his superpower was naming his opponents in a catchy way that would undermine their credibility, right? Like he really set that playbook in order. Now all politicians on the right and the left try and use it. And obviously Pierre's doing a very good job at doing that. But he's not wrong in what he's saying, especially. But we have a lot to reveal about Mark. But before we do that, we do have one last video that we want to play.
Yeah, so just to set this up a little bit, because as we're going to see that he has actually served internationally as the heads of banks. And so what we're going to watch now is a video. So it's an interview from Kevin, I don't remember how to pronounce his last name, Biaxt from the Counter Signal. Now from Juno News. They just started a new media program. Here's him having a discussion with former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. Let's see what she thinks about Maximum Carneyage.
Wanting to get your thoughts on Mark Carney and your relationship with him while you were Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and any advice you have to Canadians who think he might make a good Prime Minister.
Well, Mark Carney was Governor of the Bank of England, and under his tenure, too much money was printed, which did damage to the British economy and put our economy off track. He, at the last election, endorsed Rachel Reeves' economic policy. She's now become Chancellor. It's been a disaster for Britain. The country is heading for bankruptcy. So I would strongly recommend not backing Mark Carney or his policies on net zero, which have been disastrous for Britain and would be disastrous for Canada.
Do you trust his judgment overall, outside of ideological considerations?
Well, I believe that he made major mistakes in the management of the Bank of England. He has pushed net zero, which has been a disaster, not just for the UK, but for many countries across the world.
Thanks for your time, Prime Minister. I appreciate it.
So no, she doesn't trust him. Did you catch that? She doesn't trust him.
Yeah.
He's not trustworthy.
And that's really what we want to highlight, is that Mark Carney is a more extreme version of Justin Trudeau, especially when it comes to climate cultism and climate alarmism.
And it's interesting you say that because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. He's more extreme in his policy agenda, but the appearance of him is more stately, more moderate.
Yes.
And the design there is to win the liberals over, or what I think what's going to happen is the more and more that they label Poilievre and the conservatives as the Trump of the North, eventually people will say, okay, we don't want any more Poilievre. We don't want his name calling and his, apple eating, reporter insulting. But we also don't want another Justin Trudeau because he's a mess. So what we need a stately, measured, older, seasoned person.
He's not.
With calm, but that's his image, right? That's the image they're trying to push forward, right? He's much more balanced.
I think it's helpful to understand, like, if we can make maybe an analogy that hopefully helps people, is Mark Carney is the brain to the liberal agenda. Justin Trudeau is its face, right? Carney is the ideologue who is intellectually and philosophically forwarding the agenda of net zero, of insane progressive economic policies, Keynesianism. I think even more radical Keynesianism, which is modern monetary theory, which basically gives unlimited power to the government to continue to spend and spend and spend and spend. And certainly that's something that Miss Reeves believes in. in the UK that's led to the bankrupting of the country that Liz Truss talked about. So that's really important for understand. If you think of Trudeau as the face of this agenda, Carney is its brain, and that's again why over and over and over again, who did Justin Trudeau lean on? Who did he go to help him craft climate and economic policies?
Satan.
One Mark Carney. Well,
Satan.
Yes. Satan uses
too.
memes, and Marximum Carney is one of them. Anyways, this is we have an article from the Toronto Sun that hopefully will help us kind of get to know Carney a little bit more. So, during an announcement in Halifax, Carney said he will erase the consumer carbon tax, that's an important distinction, and make big businesses pay it without passing on the cost to everyday people. That's impossible. Reporters clearly sensed something amiss. The reporter really sensed something was amiss. One asked, does that not ultimately trickle down? Todd Battis of CTV Atlantic anchor and bureau chief asked Carney at his announcement and later in a sit-down interview. Carney replied, no, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. A steel company? How much steel are you using these days, Todd? Battis' question deserves a more honest answer. Does a carbon tax on businesses trickle down to normal taxpayers? Well, obviously, yes, of course it does. Chris Lambie, Atlantic bureau chief for the National Post, asked, you say you will drop the consumer tax, but will you maintain the federal industrial carbon tax? And if so, are you maintaining the current government levels and increases? Carney replied, if you're sitting here in Halifax and you're trying to make a decision about buying an EV or a heat pump or home installation or a better appliance, you'll see a clear fixed level of carbon that you're going to get. But we, as the federal government, will turn around and monetize that from the large polluters, and that way the taxpayer is not on the dime. Obviously, that is not true. We've seen it over and over and over. The tax on the air, aka the carbon tax, is essentially a tax on everything, and that's why it has greatly increased.
Is that why my
prices.
eggs are more expensive than they were a year ago?
Not solely, but certainly. Think about shipping, right? There's a fuel surcharge on everything. That was it was put in before the carbon tax, mind you, but it was kind of a precursor to the carbon tax and the same part of the net zero agenda, right? Because one would assume that fuel was a part of the cost of shipping before you added a fuel surcharge, right? This is completely adding. I mean, we're talking about like $4 or $5 to everything that you get if you were to buy it from Amazon or whatever. The prices are going up. So it absolutely does affect the prices. There's no doubt about it, because especially on a country Canada's size, so much of our goods are transported by a truck or a freight or train or whatever it might be. And if they're passing these taxes on to the largest polluters, so-called, it's definitely going to be felt by Canadians, right? You talk about steel and aluminum, some of these things. Yeah, okay, maybe you're not buying product like that every day, but all that stuff goes into building what, Andrew? Houses. Whoa, what does Canada not have enough of? What does Canada have a serious crisis on? Oh, building things, building houses especially. So if he's going to do it this way, it's just going to create unbelievable amounts of rising prices. But here's a video of Carney saying that he will not only use, this is him, right? He's crafty in the way that he thinks about going about implementing his agenda. So I'm going to play sleight of hand when it comes to the carbon tax. I'm going to remove it from the consumer because people hate that, but I'm going to hide it in to the producers and hope that it doesn't trickle down, which it will. But he's also willing to even use the maximum amount of government pressure and leverage to forward his agenda. And this is video evidence of just that from Mark Carney, as he talks about the fact that he's even willing, Andrew, should need be, to use the emergency powers of the government to forward his agenda. Let's check this out.
And something that my government is going to do is to use all of the powers of the federal government, including the emergency powers of the federal government, to accelerate the major projects that we need in order to build this economy and take on the Americans.
Okay, mais donc vous n'imposeriez jamais un pipeline au Québec ou à d'autres?
N'imposerai jamais.
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 Une loi d'urgence.
Mais je vais utiliser mon gouvernement, si j'étais Premier ministre, mon gouvernement utiliserait nos pouvoirs d'urgence afin d'accélérer des projets qui sont dans l'intérêt national. Okay. Mais il faut le décider avec les provinces, avec les Nations Unies.
Si une province dit non, vous ne passez pas de tuyau.
Oui, absolument.
Vous n'imposez
jamais au Québec.
So there you have it. In the French version there, he just flat out says, we're willing to use emergency powers for things that are in, quote, the national interest, aka, if I'm the prime minister, it's in my ideological interest. Because if it was in the national interest, the market economy would do these things without the fact that you would have to force them from the top down in government. Also, something
I wonder if saying that is a little bit of a litmus test for him. I wonder if he's testing the waters, because when people like you and I hear a potential prime minister say, I will invoke emergency powers to do what's best for Canada, I hear that and I remember what happened 3 years ago. And I remember what happened in the last 5 years. And that is an awful, harrowing reality that the prime minister would say, in order to take care of our people, we'll have to invoke emergency powers. And that means you may not be able to drive and travel freely in your country. You may not be able to buy the things that you would like to. You may, because we have to do what's best, we have to take care of you. And so I wonder if the tipping the hand, I mean, he's got to know that there's a large portion of the population in Canada that is absolutely triggered and angry at the potential of emergency powers. So part of me wonders if saying that is kind of his way of just kind of testing the waters and seeing, what kind of pushback will they be? If I talk about emergency powers in light of what happened 3 years ago, if there's very little pushback, okay, maybe it looks like these people are ready to be governed by a tyrant again. Maybe they're not. Maybe they haven't got that freedom bug yet. But when I hear that makes me furious.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. But this is out of the WEF Klaus Schwab playbook, right? We've talked a lot about them in the past. You can go on our Rumble channel and see a bunch of the content that we've done on the WEF. But the thing that's always talked about by these globalist elites are utilizing emergency powers to create a wartime economy where you can centralize economic activity and production.
Right.
So it's using emergency powers to go full on communism and to justify it for the sake of the common
printing more money, just redistributing. Yes.
Yeah, because those things were, in my opinion, they were done during the First and Second World War, and I think we're still paying the price for allowing any of that. For allowing the government to get their nose under the door,
and during COVID, Andrew, it happened during COVID as well. It's an emergency. We got to print money and we got to give it to Canadians, and we got to save it. Yeah, save Canada in the bad way.
Playbook. And if that weren't bad enough, Andrew, Carney's not only talking about printing money, hiding the carbon tax, ensuring that he can use emergency powers to pass his liberal progressive agenda.
Oh,
But he's also
that's not all. There's more.
Yeah. He's also talking about, and he has in the past been a big supporter of central bank digital currencies. So not only can they just print money at will, but now they would have absolute control of who has the money, what constitutes money, and they would have absolute control over the money supply as the central bank. So this comes to us from LifeSite News. The World Economic Forum linked Liberal Party leadership frontrunner Mark Carney, it just happened so easily, has a history of supporting central bank digital currencies, and in 2022 supported, quote, choking off the money donated to the Freedom Convoy. In his 2021 book, Values, Carney said that the future of money is a central bank stable coin known as a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. He noted in his book that such a currency would be similar to current cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, but without the private nature afforded to it by its decentralization. Quote, it's simply untenable in democracies that the core of the monetary system could be based off of forms of electronic private money whose creators control large blocks of the currency, like Bitcoin, he wrote. Cryptocurrencies are not the future of money. Carney noted that a CBDC, if properly designed, that's a quote from him, could serve all functions to which private crypto companies and stablecoins aspire, while addressing the fundamental legal and governance issues that will, in time, undermine those alternatives.
Let me ask you a question, Matt. I trust your expert opinion on this. If someone
I'm not an expert.
You're an expert opinion in not having your head up your butt and being able to understand what's going on.
Well,
so in that, your thoughts on this are highly valued. If someone like Justin Trudeau says, rather than invest in Bitcoin, max out your credit card. Okay, he'll say that Bitcoin's bad. Max out your credit card. Or if someone like Marximum Carneyage says, Bitcoin bad. Central bank digital currency good. Bitcoin bad. When gargoyles like these two men say things like that, what should be the inclination of anyone who is not still hooked up to the Matrix? What should they do? What do you think they should do when these slime creatures say stuff like that?
That's a good question. I mean, raise a stink, freak out. I mean, it's this idea of like the open conspiracy. They're telling you right out in the open exactly what they want to do, and like we've said on the program, just believe them. And in just believing what these guys and gals, these globalist elites have been saying, we've been offering people news and analysis that is right way more often than it is wrong. And it's not because we're prophets or sons of prophets or anything like that, or even experts in some of these areas. It's just that we're taking people at face value. And we know the importance of worldview thinking, and we know that nature abhors a vacuum. So, these philosophical situations and these principles tend to go through a period of differentiation. They get worked out. It's very hard for people to live with cognitive dissonance. So Mark's Carney. I mean, I'm never not going to say that, I guess. He might be saying for everybody that he's not going to continue the consumer carbon tax. But as we've already talked about, all he's doing is hiding it. He's hiding the ball. And we know from what he's written in the past, what he plans on doing, what he said openly, we know that he is more radical than Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax. That in a perfect world, if he could be the dictator for a day, it would be far higher than the Trudeau government right now. So, I mean, this should send chills down people's spines. Is though his demeanor might be a little bit more professional, more stately, he has gray hair, people tend to take that more seriously than the hypocritical prince, that boy wonder there, Justin Trudeau. But he's no less radical. And I think, again, I really want people to understand that he is the brain of this liberal progressive platform. And Trudeau is its face, right? Trudeau is its face. So you're just getting a more radical, more sly, more serpentine Justin Trudeau if you vote for Mark Carney, and one who's telling you flat out he's willing to centralize all political power in the federal government, and we should believe him and fight against that from happening for sure.
So we have a discussion with Pablo from Bull Bitcoin that we're going to be dropping hopefully in a few weeks, and this will get fleshed out there. But when people like this say, "Don't buy Bitcoin," go buy Bitcoin, because what to do is basically control you. So they know what our friends at Bull Bitcoin know, and what people who are in that Bitcoin space know. And that is that regardless of what we have to say about the stability or the volatility of Bitcoin, about the nature of it being different from fiat or precious metals and hard assets, at the end of the day, here is what the elites know and what people who understand Bitcoin know, is they cannot take it from you, control it, or manipulate it or make more of it, right? It is a scarce resource that in your possession is completely safe unless you give up your password phrase or your word phrase. So they know that. And so what they don't want for you, they don't want you to be independent and in control of your resources. They want you to be dependent upon the state for the rest of your life. So as I've said before, whatever the federal government tells you to do the opposite, and you'll be fine. You'll actually do quite well if you do the opposite. So when they say don't buy Bitcoin, go buy a little bit of Bitcoin. You'll be better off for it. Now, we have to go back.
And Andrew, I think it's really important, again, for if I could jump in, it's really important for people to understand. I'm literally looking at the stock market right now, and as of time of recording, which is February 20th, gold is at just below an all-time high at $2,956 USD an ounce, so astronomically high. Bull Bitcoin is hovering around $98,000 USD, which is about, I think that's almost like 145 Canadian.
Not Bull Bitcoin, just Bitcoin.
Sorry, Bitcoin. Yeah. So
if value in Bull Bitcoin was that high, that's amazing. Good for them.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Good for our friends if that were true. But so we're seeing gold, Bitcoin, they're hovering around all-time highs, which tells you something, right? That tells you something in the world, that people are undervaluing fiat currencies and are they're not overvalued, but they're valuing more and more decentralized currencies. So the very thing that Mark Carney is talking about doing is the very thing that people around the world in the market are actually hedging against. They're trying to fight against that. So, you can spout the our democracies, you can try and pretend you're a centrist, but what you are is a radical statist leftist, and you're exceedingly dangerous, and we shouldn't even let you in to power as the PM for one moment, let alone
he's not a centrist. He's a central bank digital currencyist. That would probably be more.
He's a centrist when it comes to centralizing power in his
central bank digital currencyist. I want to go back to that same Edmonton Journal article that reported that Liberal Party support would go up if Carney were the party leader. They released another article titled, quote, "All the reasons why we can't trust Mark Carney to put Canada first," close quote. So here's a little bit of a sample from the article. Quote, "Carney was governor of the respective national banks in Ottawa and London, England. He's both the United Nations Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance and chair of the board of the huge international corporation Bloomberg in New York City. He and fellow Europeans, he also has UK and Irish citizenship, make up the foundation board of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. He's the chair of the Canadian multinational Brookfield Asset Management in Toronto, with its $900 billion American in assets. Carney has also said he sees himself as a member of the same social movement as radical climate activist Greta Thunberg. Carney has become a key player at the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, Brookfield, and Bloomberg because he's brilliant at one thing: getting governments and private businesses to fall in line with Thunberg's climate change agenda. As Steve Koonin, the Undersecretary for Science at the Department of Energy in the Obama administration, noted in his book on climate change, Carney, this is a direct quote, is probably the single most influential figure in driving investors and financial institutions around the world to focus on changes in climate and human influences upon them. Close quote. That's quite the thing to say about someone. The article continues. And as Peter Foster, a Cambridge-educated economist and former senior editor of the Financial Post, wrote in 2020, Carney's focus is a radical change of the business and material world. So this is what Foster writes. Carney's plan is to control the global economy by seizing and commanding heights of finance, not by nationalization, but by exerting non-democratic pressure to divest from and stop funding fossil fuels. The private sector is to become a partner in imposing its own bondage. This will be do-it-yourself totalitarianism, close quote. So, I mean, it's quite evident that, as Matt said, that Marx Carney, or Maximum Carneyage, is indeed the puppet master brains that whereas Justin Trudeau, though he's evil, is a willing participant and glad as a apparent sociopath to do what he does. Ultimately, Trudeau is not the one making the decisions. He's the one following orders. And it appears that Marx Carney is one of the guys sitting around the table making those decisions, that he's one of the power brokers, one of the string pullers making the decision. So the reality that you would have these people looking at him saying he has international passports, he's been the head of all these international banks and organizations. I mean, the former UK premier said he's terrible, but here you have people saying he is the largest driver of the climate change agenda in the world in getting banks and economies and countries to fall in line. This is a dangerous, dangerous person. So don't believe the hype that indeed he's winning all this crazy support back to the Liberals, because he's not. I think people are fed up enough for now with the Liberal Party. The problem is that in 8 or so years, once the pendulum swings all the way back, and now people are thinking, well, we're tired of the Conservatives, we want the Liberals. Who's our guy? Well, Carney's the guy. He's the guy because he was measured. He led the Liberals through the dark conservative days, and he's right on climate stuff. So the issue is that he might not win now, but if he continues to be the leader of the Liberal Party, then he will, or if he's the guy behind the scenes, right? He can't be the leader of the party. Sorry, he can't be the leader of the party if he's not elected, but he's not able to actually have a vote in Parliament. So he can't do anything really as the leader of the party if the party's not in power. But if he continues to be the face of the party and an important member of the Liberal Party, then when they win again in 6 to 10 years, if he's the guy behind the steering wheel, it will be devastating for Canada, even more devastating than we've seen under Justin Trudeau. Are you looking to take control of your investments and align them with your Christian values? At Rocklink Investment Partners, they build customized portfolios tailored to your specific needs, all while promoting transparency and integrity. As a privately managed investment firm operated by Christians with a conservative worldview, Rocklink stands apart by helping you grow your wealth without compromising your beliefs. Visit rocklink.com or email them at info@rocklink.com and discover how they can help you steward your finances wisely. Rocklink Investment Partners, integrity-driven, values-aligned, and built for you. So as I said in the lead-in, We've had a rather engaged audience as of late, and so we have several comments both sent to us by way of email, so you can always reach out to us, libertydispatch@proton.me, libertydispatch@proton.me, or some of these are comments on some of our videos or some of our Substack stuff. And again, our Substack is ldcanada.substack.com. So, first of all, Ruth writes this. Here's an idea. If Trump wants a 51st state, let's hand over everything south of 49, that's the 49th parallel, all the way across. Maybe trade it for the Alaska Panhandle. That way, we get rid of Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Victoria, and any number of other leftist cesspools in return for the vast tract of pristine wilderness. What's not to like? I mean, one of the things, humorous comment. I think I have some buddies in Southern Ontario that may not like that. they may not like that trade-off entirely. I'm thinking about brothers in Windsor and London and Waterloo, but I think we're going to continue to see. So we wrote an article about this. I think we're going to continue to see serious people bringing up the reality of, hey, maybe Alberta needs to think about whether they are independent, whether they if Canada will continue to take advantage of Alberta and use them to essentially subsidize central Canada, that maybe as a province they need to make some serious decisions. So we'll see how that goes. But minus the fact that there are a lot of people who are south of the 49 who don't want to go. That's an interesting idea. Thanks, Ruth. Paul writes this. We need to think bigger as Canadians and consider making America the 11th province or the 4th territory. Could you imagine? Continuing, Donald Trump is a globalist who has been bought and paid for. His play is to amalgamate the countries of North America, which is part of the plan of the World Economic Forum. So we'll see. I have raised my concerns about a North American Union that's anything at all like a European Union. I've raised my concerns about hey, we're all one big continent, borders not as important. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how the future unfolds. But to say definitively that's who Donald Trump is, I don't know about that. To say maybe he suggested some things that seem to cozy up to a soft version of this, I think that's fair. America, the 11th province, they certainly would not go for that. They don't want to give up their guns, and they shouldn't give up their guns. So Ron writes this, and so this is him quoting our article, the one where I mentioned, the article we wrote for our LD Substack, ldcanada.substack.com about the maple-flavored union. This is Ron quoting our article. Quote, but Canada has a rich history and a deeply Christian one at that, and I believe we should do all that we can to restore Canada to its roots while maintaining our national sovereignty. That's what I said in the article, and this is what Ron writes. As mentioned by Michael Wagner in his book Time to Leave, Canada is broken and Canada cannot be fixed. I disagree that Canada cannot be fixed. It's certainly broken. But there are nations, empires, cultures in the past that have been in a worse position than we are, and the power of the gospel and the church working can bring about a reformation. So continuing, a slim chance for Canada to be fixed would be an Alberta referendum, which would bring the parties to the table. Trudeau has appointed most of the judges and senators and thus controls all three spheres of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Which is true, but that's for now. So the importance of having people engage in these spheres of culture, but also making sure that we engage in the work of kingdom expansion and evangelism and building schools and building churches and institutions means that, yes, in the short term, there does not appear to be very many wins, but the goal is to build and construct so that in the long term, we can see a cultural turnaround and the institutions in place. So I'm not ready to give up on Canada yet. I don't think we should be ready to give up on Canada yet. And the truth is, if the idea of if we say we give up on Canada, it's too far gone. This can happen anywhere else in the world, and it has happened in many places in history. So I'm curious again to see what Alberta does, but I don't necessarily think that Canada is broken beyond repair, at least not broken to the point that all Christians should just get out of Dodge. That's just my opinion. Last, Laura Lee commenting on the same article, she wrote this: Albertans should become an independent nation. We have enough resources to more than support our residents. As much as U.S. citizens are great friends and neighbors, I would never want to be called American, as the reputation in the rest of the world is so deplorable that they have to put Canadian badges on their baggage and jackets. I mean, I don't know. I've been to many parts of the United States. I don't think I've found people friendlier than I have in the United States. I mean, I've been to Texas, I've been to New York, I've been to parts of Michigan, Florida. I don't know if I found friendlier people than I found in parts of the United States. And I said this on an episode recently. People in New York City are way more polite and kind than people in Toronto, for example. It's not even close. Not even close. I was completely shocked when I went to New York City many years ago, growing up in Toronto, but I found myself saying, man, Canadians pride themselves on not being like Americans. These Americans are way nicer than fellow Torontonians in New York City. So whatever, that's anecdotal, what I'm saying, and what Laura Lee's saying. So Americans are very rude and think their poop doesn't stink. I mean, I think we highlighted this on our last episode. Canadians are actually probably worse in that we pride ourselves on being better than Americans, but we're worse than Americans. We are per capita much more in debt than Americans. We murder more babies than Americans per capita. We legalized sodomite unions before they did. We removed all restrictions on preborn baby murder before they did. We had our Arrive can. We're probably going to have a digital ID, central bank digital currency before they will. We're much worse than the Americans in many social, economic, and cultural ways. And so I would think if there's any group of people who say, oh, no, we think we're better and we are better and we're not as bad as they are, we're worse than the Americans in that regard. So I kind of disagree with that sentiment. So not all of them, but a great majority of them when they are traveling to other countries. Again, I don't know how you know that. I mean, I don't know how someone has had interaction with a great majority of other Americans when they're traveling. There's a little bit of anti-American sentiment, Laura Lee, which I don't think is particularly helpful, especially when we consider that anything that we would attribute to Americans as a negative, we could probably attribute to ourselves and maybe worse. So she says, we can be Albertans first and foremost. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I think that, there's been a lot of talk of Albertan secession or independence, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see if they do become the 51st state. We'll see how that plays out exactly. I mean, certainly they do have the resources to be able to, I think, more than take care of themselves in wealth generation, but we'll see. So a little bit of a common thread in our mailbag regarding, do we become the 51st state, and what should Alberta do in light of this? So curious, we'll see. So I mean, everyone who contributed, thank you so much for leaving a comment on our video or emailing us. Again, if you want to reach out to us with any comments, any questions, any feedback, you can hit us up, libertydispatch@proton.me. libertydispatch@proton.me. That's how you can find us. Send all your questions there, email, comments, feedback, all that stuff. We'd love to. Or if you have a particularly spicy or insightful comment on one of our videos, either on Rumble or on Substack, we will probably bring it up in our show as well. Thanks so much for spending some time with us on Liberty Dispatch. If you kind of notice, I've been flying solo just for a little bit. Matt had to duck out for some family stuff. No problem. Everything's okay. Everything's fine. But he was unable to continue on with the filming. So thanks so much for everyone who sent in comments and who commented for our articles and on our videos and contributing to the mailbag. Marx Carney is a globalist nightmare that will plunge Canada into even more ruin than Justin Trudeau did, and we'll see what happens with him and with the Liberal Party, and when they, or if they do officially say, yeah, he's the guy. We'll see how that plays out. So again, thanks so much for joining us on Liberty Dispatch. Head over to ldcanada.substack.com. That's where you can subscribe, where you can get our emails sent to you. All of our content is there. Our weekly articles are there. Our regular episodes are there. Our news brief is there. The interviews that we're going to be releasing will be there. Everything's there. And please become a paid subscriber. If you support the show, then eventually, I mean, the first couple episodes, no, but eventually all of our interviews, you'll be able to watch the first part of the interview. But if you want to catch the latter part of the interview with the real spicy questions where we really go deep with our guests, you're going to want to subscribe as a paid subscriber at ldcanada.substack.com. Thanks so much again. Until next time, Galatians 5:1. Liberty Dispatch has been brought to you by SDG Media. If you want to stay in touch with us and all things Liberty Dispatch, join our email list, or support the show, head over to ldcanada.substack.com.